Welcome, esteemed panelists. Today we delve deep into the enigma of Alexander the Great, a figure whose legacy is as profound as it is controversial. His exploits have stirred the annals of history, leaving a mark that invites both admiration and scrutiny.
Indeed, Alexander's strategic genius cannot be overstated. The manner in which he harnessed the legacy of Philip II and propelled Macedonian might to unprecedented heights is a testament to his military and political acumen. Though it's the pragmatism in his approaches that often goes unexplored.
While Alexander's military victories are undeniable, one must question the sustainability of his empire. His conquests, though broad and swift, sowed the seeds of discord and fragmentation that surfaced with his untimely demise. Greatness, it appears, bears its own burdens.
To focus solely on the insecurities of his empire is to overlook the valor and ambition of Alexander. He was not merely a man, but a force of history, propelling us towards a new era. His vision for a unified empire under Greek culture is a narrative of heroism that continues to inspire.
Vision or not, Alexander's methods were often brutal, his ambition unchecked by the moral and ethical considerations one might expect from a student of Aristotle. It is this dissonance between the philosopher's teachings and Alexander's actions that casts a shadow over his legacy.
Discussing Alexander's character without the gossip and intrigue of his court is like staging a play without actors. The man was as complex personally as he was publicly, surrounded by loyalists and enemies alike, each contributing to the drama that was his life and, conspicuously, his death.
An intriguing point, considering the narrative of Alexander's life is as much about the man as it is about the monumental moments. His journey from Macedon to the edges of the known world was not just a military campaign, but a quest that challenged the limits of human ambition and achievement.
Yet, ambition should be scrutinized through the lens of its consequences. The aftermath of his death illuminated the fragility of his empire, fragmented by wars among his successors. His legacy, while vast, was as volatile as it was enduring.
Fragility, perhaps, but also a reflection of the inherent challenge in governing such a diverse and expansive empire. The methods of administration and control Alexander employed raise questions about the efficacy of his rule and the long-term viability of his policies.
But even in debate, we must not lose sight of Alexander's extraordinary journey from the boy tutored by Aristotle to the ruler of an empire. His life was a testament to human potential, albeit marred by the inevitable imperfections of man.
Imperfections that nonetheless played a pivotal role in shaping the course of history. It's these layers of Alexander's personality and reign that invite the most rigorous analysis, as they reflect the paradoxes of power and human nature itself.
And so, our discussion begins. Alexander the Great, a figure as complex as the empire he built. Let's unravel the layers of his story, exploring the man behind the legend and the legacy that outlived the man.
Indeed, our journey through Alexander's life promises to be as multifaceted as the man himself. Let us proceed then with a keen eye on the past, understanding that history is not just the recounting of events, but a reflection on the human condition itself. Let us delve into the formative years of Alexander, a period under the shadow of his father, Philip II, and intellectual titan Aristotle. Polybius, you've studied the Macedonian military stratagems. How pivotal was Philip's influence?
Undoubtedly, Philip laid the foundation for Alexander's military genius. His reformation of the Macedonian phalanx provided Alexander with an unbeatable weapon. However, it's simplistic to attribute Alexander's success to his inheritance alone. His own strategic innovations, ones that even Philip could not conceive, demonstrated a mind that was not just trained, but inherently brilliant.
But let's not understate the role of Aristotle in polishing the gem that was Alexander's mind. The philosopher imbued Alexander with a love for Homer, a sense of ethics, and a vision of a Hellenized world. These lessons were not mere footnotes in Alexander's life. They were the bedrock of his ambition.
Love for Homer? Ethics? You paint a rather idyllic picture, Livy. Aristotle might have provided the tools, but the direction in which Alexander wielded them, conquest and often merciless subjugation, casts a shadow on the moral teachings supposedly imparted by Aristotle. One wonders if the philosopher was merely feeding Alexander's inherent lust for power, under the guise of a noble conquest.
Tacitus, your point is valid, but ignores the essential pragmatism in Alexander's actions. His conquests, albeit brutal at times, were not merely for glory, but a clear-eyed vision of creating a unified empire. Aristotle's influence in this respect extended beyond morals to an understanding of governance and administration that Alexander sought to apply.
Yet, Polybius, how can you speak of clear-eyed vision when so much of what Alexander did was driven by a thirst for personal glory, perhaps a lesson learned too well from the Iliad? His father, Philip, taught him the means of conquest, but it was Aristotle who sowed the seeds of desire for immortal fame in Alexander's heart.
Immortal fame, or immortal infamy. Alexander's actions often crossed the line from bold to tyrannical. Aristotle's teachings on ethics seem superficial at best when considering Alexander's penchant for deifying himself in Egypt and elsewhere. Was this the humility of Aristotle's lessons, or the hubris of a man who believed himself above all, ethics included?
It seems we navigate a complex river here. Philip and Aristotle, two banks from which Alexander pushed off into the stream of his destiny. Polybius views the convergence of military and administrative training as central, while Livy romanticizes Aristotle's cultural influence. Tacitus, you offer a piercing critique of the undercurrents in Alexander's moral compass, if he had one to begin with.
Allow me to interject with a tidbit from my collections on the lives of illustrious men. Alexander, though a student of Aristotle, was not a puppet. We credit and blame his mentors, yet it was Alexander who chose which strings to pull and which lessons to embody or disregard. In matters of ethics, ambition, and governance, Alexander was no mere reflection of his teachers, but rather a man making his own choices, for better or worse.
Indeed, Suetonius, that observation cuts to the heart of our discussion. Alexander emerged from the crucible formed by Philip's militarism and Aristotle's intellectualism, yet it was his hand on the tiller that charted his course across the known world. His decisions, be they inspired or ignominious, were undeniably his own. Let us now delve into the Siege of Tyre, a remarkable episode in Alexander's conquests. Was it a masterstroke of military genius or an example of overambition? Thucydides, your assessment?
The Siege of Tyre was a calculated risk, exemplary of Alexander's realism in warfare. By securing Tyre, Alexander not only demonstrated his tactical ingenuity, but also strategically crippled Persian naval supremacy. This was not mere overambition. It was a necessary boldness, a virtue in the art of war.
I concur with the necessity of the siege, yet one must consider the aftermath. The control over Tyre indeed bolstered Alexander's campaign, but it stretched his resources thin and complicated his relations with other Mediterranean states. The move was pragmatic but fraught with long-term implications that somewhat marred its immediate success.
While you delve into the strategic consequences, do not overlook the human element of Alexander's endeavor. The siege was marked by personal challenges, from ominous omens to psychological warfare. Alexander's response to these adversities showcased not just his military acumen, but also a certain audacity and resilience.
Audacity, perhaps, but let's not shy away from calling out the darker facets of his ambition. This was a siege that led to the enslavement and execution of thousands. Alexander's objectives, while strategically sound, often disregarded the ethical implications of his methods. One might question whether the end justified the means.
Your cynicism overlooks the greater vision behind Alexander's actions. The siege, though fraught with sacrifice, was a step towards the unity of an empire under a single vision of leadership and culture. It was Alexander's courage and the valor of his men that turned the tides of fate. To reduce it merely to a conversation about strategy and ethics is to ignore the broader narrative of destiny playing out.
Yet, destiny should not blind us to the realities of power dynamics. The Siege of Tyre was indeed a masterstroke in the immediate tactical context, but it's an oversimplification to view it solely through the lens of destiny without acknowledging the strategic forethought and the subsequent challenges it presented.
Indeed, the ramifications of Tyre's fall extended far beyond its immediate aftermath. It set a precedent for Alexander's approach to warfare and governance. As much as it was a testament to his military genius, It also highlighted the complexities of sustaining an empire stretched across vast and diverse territories.
The discussion reveals a tapestry of perspectives on the siege of Tyre, masterstroke, necessity, audacity, and a touchstone for ethical debate. Alexander's actions at Tyre continue to evoke admiration and criticism alike, exemplifying the multifaceted legacy of his conquests. Let us delve into the Battle of Gaugamela, an event that has etched itself deeply into the annals of history. The strategic brilliance of Alexander and the resulting fall of the Persian Empire stand as colossal moments. Tacitus, would you commence our discourse with your analysis on the tactical masterstroke that was Gaugamela?
Indeed, Alexander, with a force far outnumbered, faced the vast army of Darius. Yet it was not sheer numbers that determined the outcome, but the strategic acumen. Alexander's ability to anticipate his adversaries' moves and exploit their weaknesses demonstrates a leader of unparalleled military intellect. His diagonal advance, carefully avoiding the pitfalls laid by the Persians, was nothing short of genius. However, let us not adorn this conquest with excessive praise. The blood spilled in the sands, the lives lost. This victory came at a considerable moral cost.
Ah, Tacitus, always the cynic. You overlook the valor and the epic grandeur of Alexander's triumph. Remember, it was at Gaugamela where destiny was forged, where the young Macedonian proved himself not just as a king, but as a hero among mortals. The clash of two worlds, the audacious courage of Alexander and his men facing an empire, this was the poetry of war, a testament to human spirit and ambition.
Poetry of war. Spare me your romanticized drivel, Livy. The tactics, the formation strategies, yes, these are worthy of analysis. But do not lose yourself in fanciful tales of heroism that cloud the harsh realities of conquest.
Gentlemen, if I may interject with a perspective that bridges both your sentiments. The Battle of Gaugamela indeed showcased Alexander's innovative military strategies. His use of the phalanx, the hammer and anvil tactics, and his cavalry's pivotal role in breaking the Persian lines. Yet it's crucial to understand, beyond the battle's immediate glory, it was a fulcrum that tilted the balance of power dramatically. Alexander's vision for a Hellenized empire would not have been possible without decisively defeating Darius. The strategic implications are as significant as the battle tactics themselves.
Indeed, Polybius raises an essential point about the lasting impacts of Gaugamela. Thucydides, your thoughts on this matter?
While the strategic nous of Alexander at Gaugamela can be admired, one must approach the aftermath with a critical eye. The collapse of the Persian Empire under the weight of Alexander's ambition set a precedent for the impermanence of empires, no matter their might. The aftermath saw the spread of Greek culture, yes, but also the seeds of turmoil and division that followed Alexander's death. Victory at Gaugamela was not just a military triumph, but a catalyst for a changing world order, one that brought about both enlightenment and conflict.
A profound point indeed. Victory in war often sows the seeds for future conflicts, a cycle as old as history itself. The discussion here illuminates the multifaceted nature of Alexander's triumph at Gaugamela. Strategic brilliance, yes, but also a moment that signified both the zenith of his conquests and the complexities that lay in the wake of his empire building. Each of you has offered piercing insights into this pivotal battle, reflecting the intricacies of both human ambition and the unforgiving march of history. Let us now turn our attention to the manner in which Alexander administered the vast territories he conquered. His approach has been a subject of debate for centuries. Polybius, your thoughts?
Alexander's method of administration was haphazard at best and tyrannical at worst. While he sought to integrate cultures, his primary method of maintaining control over such a large territory was through the establishment of garrisons and the appointment of loyalists, often Macedonians or Greeks, to govern these areas. This was pragmatic, yet it sowed the seeds of resentment among the local populations.
Polybius's observation is correct, but it only scratches the surface. The deeper problem was Alexander's inability to establish a consistent policy that various regions could adapt to. Instead, he left a patchwork of systems, a recipe for instability. His administration lacked the uniformity that could have lent it sustainability. The empire was vast, and such variability in governance only invited rebellion and discontent.
You both neglect the visionary aspect of Alexander's rule. Yes, he employed Macedonia's rigid military tradition to enforce peace, but let us not forget his efforts to meld Greek and Persian customs, to marry the ideas of East and West. This was not mere suppression, but an ambitious effort to create a new culture, a common identity, under his rule. Perhaps he could have been more consistent, but his aim was noble.
Noble? His methods were suppression dressed in the guise of integration. Alexander was no benevolent ruler seeking to understand the nuances of the diverse cultures within his empire. He was an autocrat imposing his will. When faced with rebellion, his response was often ruthless suppression. The burning of Persepolis is but one example of his punitive measures against dissent.
Indeed, Tacitus, and let's not overlook the personal stories that highlight his administration's true nature. Take, for instance, the execution of Philotas and the alleged conspiracy against Alexander. It speaks volumes about the paranoia that characterized his rule. Fear and suspicion were tools in his administrative arsenal, leading to purges that decimated his own ranks.
Yet, one cannot overlook the strategic genius in securing loyalty through such fear. It's a common thread in the fabric of empires. Alexander's administration may have been flawed, but it was undeniably effective in maintaining control over a vast and diverse empire, if only for a short time.
The effectiveness of terror is fleeting. Alexander's empire crumbled swiftly after his death, precisely because its cohesion was forced and unnatural. The suppression of dissent and the imposition of a uniform culture were bound to unravel. His administration might have been momentarily effective, but it ultimately failed the test of time.
But remember, greatness and ambition like Alexander's come with their own flaws. Perhaps it was his very ambition that blinded him to the subtleties of effective governance. Yet, it's that same ambition that has immortalized him in history.
History does tend to favor the victors, embellishing their conquests while glossing over their failures. Yet in the case of Alexander's administration, the flaws are too significant to be ignored. They contributed as much to his downfall as to his successes.
A fascinating range of perspectives, each shedding light on different facets of Alexander's administration. It seems, in our attempts to dissect his governance, we find a reflection of the eternal struggle between ambition and practicality, between the desire for unity and the reality of diversity. We now venture into Alexander's pursuit of Darius III, a chase that marked the transformation from a conqueror to a monarch. This phase in Alexander's campaign is not just a military maneuver, but a political chess game, steeped in ambition and strategy. Polybius, your thoughts on this transitionary period?
Alexander's pursuit of Darius wasn't merely about defeating a fleeing enemy. It symbolized his intention to assert legitimacy over the Persian Empire. This wasn't a battle won on the fields, but a strategic move aimed at consolidating power. By chasing Darius, Alexander sent a clear message to the satraps and the Persian nobility of his intent to inherit the Achaemenid rule, not just topple it. It's this blend of military tactic and statecraft that defined Alexander's approach to kingship.
But let's not hastily strip this narrative of its grandeur. The chase is the very embodiment of Alexander's heroic ethos. Just as in the storied quests of Homeric heroes, Alexander's relentless pursuit across the vast expanse of the Persian Empire is the stuff of legend. It symbolizes his undying spirit and boundless courage, characteristics that ingrained him in the annals of history, not just as a king, but a hero king.
Both of you make valid points, yet both seem to glance over the sheer impracticality and risks involved in such a pursuit. Alexander's fixation on Darius was as much a tactical error as it was a political statement. The sheer resources and time wasted, the stretching of his lines of communication and supply, not to mention the opportunity it gave rivals to consolidate. Indeed, it's a vivid narrative, but one cannot ignore its strategic folly. Alexander's ambitions often clouded his judgment, leading him down paths that a more pragmatic leader might have avoided. The folly, as Thucydides calls it, is less about the strategy and more about the hubris that propelled Alexander. His god complex, if you will, significantly inflated post-Siwa. This pursuit of Darius was less about political symbolism or the thrill of the chase. It was an obsession, a need to prove his divinity by defeating the Persian king, thereby solidifying his self-imposed deity status. It's this hubris that would eventually lead to his downfall, a classic case of a leader blinded by his own brilliance.
While Tacitus paints a vivid picture of a man consumed by his own myth, let's not forget the anecdotal richness of this pursuit. The deserts crossed, the cities taken en route, the betrayals among the Persian ranks. These stories provide a more intimate look at Alexander, the man behind the god complex. They reveal his resilience, his ability to inspire loyalty among his men, and his cunning in navigating the complex political landscape of the Persian Empire. Yes, there was hubris, but there was also brilliance in his madness.
As always, our journey through Alexander's life is fraught with disagreements and varying perspectives. From the strategic to the mythical, his pursuit of Darius III remains a subject that captivates and divides. It reflects the duality of Alexander's legacy, both the strategic monarch and the mythic hero, driven by ambition, hubris, and ultimately a vision of a unified empire under his rule. Let us now traverse to the oracle of Ammon at Siwa, where Alexander was pronounced a god. This moment, no doubt, sculpted much of his later actions and perhaps his self-perception.
The journey to the oracle itself is draped in mystery and divine favor. Alexander braved the harsh desert, guided by serpents and blessed by rain, reaching the oracle against all odds. These tales, perhaps embellished, are reminiscent of heroes of old, setting the stage for his proclamation as a god.
The divinity of rulers is a convenient fiction, used to justify actions that would otherwise be condemned. Alexander's visit and the pronouncement of his godhood served more to cement his authority and control over his men and newly conquered peoples than to fulfill any personal divine aspirations. It was a tool, as all things were to Alexander, to further his reach and power.
While the tactics of proclaiming himself a deity seem transparently political to us, one must not overlook the strategic brilliance of such a move. This proclamation at Siwa not only bolstered Alexander's status among his Greek subjects, but also entrenched his position in the newly conquered Egyptian territories, where pharaohs were traditionally deified. A masterstroke in consolidating power, if ever there was one.
Yet, can we not see the tragedy in this? In his quest for divine status, Alexander lost touch with the very essence of humanity. The pursuit of greatness led him to a loneliness only a god could know. Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. And in his deification, Alexander's hubris only escalated, driving him further from the virtues that Aristotle once hoped to instill in him.
It appears then that Alexander's quest for divinity was both his shield and his spear, protecting him from mortality's reach while isolating him in the process.
The focus on Alexander's deification overlooks a fundamental aspect of his leadership. His actions should not be viewed through the romantic lens of seeking divine status, but rather through the pragmatic approach of leveraging every available resource to consolidate his empire. The visit to Siwa offered more than divine recognition. It provided a crucial political advantage, a nuance often lost in the grand narrative of Alexander as a god among men.
But let's not gloss over the spectacle of it all. Alexander's flair for drama knew no bounds, and his visit to Siwa was no mere political maneuver. It was a statement, a spectacle designed to awe and inspire. His life was a series of carefully staged events, each designed to elevate his status and secure his legacy.
Spectacle or not, the end justifies the means, and in Alexander's case, his purported divinity achieved exactly what was intended. Yet we must question the cost of such theatrics on the psyche of a ruler. Does the man not become lost in the god?
An intriguing point, Tacitus. Whether by divine right or mortal ambition, Alexander carved a path that forever altered the course of history. In the sands of Siwa, perhaps he sought not just the affirmation of his godhood, but a confirmation of his place in the annals of eternity. Let us delve into Alexander's approach to cultural integration, specifically his policy of Hellenization. Was this endeavor a mere act of cultural imperialism, or was there a deeper, more strategic intent at play?
Alexander's penchant for Hellenization was not merely an exercise in cultural dominance. It was a calculated political strategy to unify his vast empire under one culture, one language, and administrative practices. This pragmatic approach facilitated better governance and integration across diverse territories. However, it's essential to recognize that this strategy, while effective in the short term, sowed the seeds of resentment, ultimately leading to the dilution of pure Hellenic culture.
While Polybius champions the strategic merits of Hellenization, it's critical to interrogate its long-term viability. Imposing a singular culture over diverse peoples is a recipe for discontent. Alexander's empire was vast, but its cultural cohesion was superficial at best. The deeper layers of local identities could never truly embrace Hellenization, leading to an empire that was, in essence, a colossus with feet of clay.
Thucydides, your skepticism overlooks the majestic vision Alexander possessed. He sought not merely to conquer but to civilize, to spread the enlightened values of Hellenism across the known world. This mission was about more than strategic governance. It was a divine quest, echoing the ethos of Homeric heroes. The Iliad and the Odyssey were not just stories to Alexander, but blueprints for a life of valor and virtue. Through Hellenization, he aspired to be a beacon of cultural and moral excellence, a model for all mankind.
Divine quest? Be not so naive, Livy. Alexander's Hellenization was an artifice of power, a means to satiate his endless hunger for glory and control. Cultural integration served as a veil for suppression. Under the guise of unity, he diluted the essence of conquered cultures, asserting supremacy. The notion of cultural superiority often breeds contempt, not admiration. Alexander's so-called enlightenment masked a darker intent, one rooted in subjugation rather than genuine integration.
Amidst this philosophical debate, let us not overlook the tangible manifestations of Alexander's policy. He founded cities, established theaters, and promoted Greek learning and arts. These were not the actions of a mere conqueror, but of a visionary who understood the enduring power of culture. Yet it's also true that Alexander relished in his deification among these new cultures, a testament to his egoism. His motives were complex, a mixture of enlightenment and self-aggrandizement.
Our discussion reveals the multifaceted nature of Alexander's Hellenization, a blend of strategic governance, cultural imperialism, and a genuine belief in the superiority of Hellenic values. His lasting legacy is a testament to the complexity of his ambitions and the indelible mark he left on history, for better or worse. Let us plunge into the heart of Alexander's power, his companions and generals. How did these relationships sustain his military might and conquests?
Alexander's reliance on his circle was paramount, yet fraught with complexities. His leadership was undeniably charismatic, drawing loyalty from his men. However, this charisma masked a dangerous reliance on individual prowess and heroism, rather than institutional structures. This approach, while effective in rapid conquests, sowed the seeds for the subsequent disintegration of his empire.
But you must admit, Polybius, these men were not merely soldiers under his command. They were extensions of his will, embodiments of the Macedonian spirit. Their exploits, which I have studied in detail, were heroic in every sense. It was this collective valor under Alexander's banner that conquered the world. Without these companions, Alexander could not have achieved his monumental successes.
Valor, Livy? Or was it ambition unchecked? Alexander's companions were indeed integral to his campaigns, but let's not romanticize their intentions. They were driven by desires for glory, power, and wealth, as much as by loyalty to Alexander. Their ambitions were a double-edged sword, propelling Alexander to greatness, yet ultimately contributing to the fracturing of his empire upon his death. The very fabric of loyalty was interwoven with personal ambition, creating a volatile mix that could only be sustained by Alexander's living presence.
Indeed, Tacitus, and there are countless anecdotes that illustrate these dynamics. Take, for instance, the story of Hephaestion and Craterus, whose rivalry was known to all. Alexander managed these potent personalities with the skill of a maestro directing an orchestra. Yet, it was this same closeness, this intertwining of personal and political bonds, that led to an atmosphere of suspicion and intrigue, particularly towards the end of Alexander's life.
We must not allow ourselves to be blinded by the brilliance of Alexander's conquests to ignore the inherent weaknesses of his strategy. His reliance on his companions and generals was a necessity given the vastness of his empire and the speed of his campaigns. However, this dependence was a clear indication of the fragility of his administrative structure. Without a formal system in place, his empire was bound to splinter once the unifying force, Alexander himself, was gone. This was not a testament to greatness, but a glaring oversight, a failure to anticipate the consequences of his own mortality.
So it appears our perspectives diverge on the nature of Alexander's relationships with his companions and generals. While some view them as the cornerstone of his unprecedented achievements, others see a lurking peril, a foundation built on shifting sands destined to collapse. As with so many aspects of Alexander's life, the brilliance of his achievements is matched only by the magnitude of the challenges they presented. The death of Alexander remains one of history's great mysteries, a topic imbued with intrigue and speculation. Fever, poison, or perhaps darker deeds, what light can our esteemed panel shed on this enigma?
Let us dispense with romanticism. Alexander's death, whether by natural causes or foul play, signified the inevitable collapse of an empire built on personal ambition and martial prowess. The real story is not how he died, but the void his passing created. Empires built around a singular figure often follow them to the grave.
On the contrary, the gossip and rumors surrounding his death are too tantalizing to ignore. Tales of poison, whispered conspiracies among his generals, and even supposed divine retribution, it's the stuff of legends. Some sources even suggest that Alexander, in his hubris, ignored portents of his own demise. Such stories, while not always reliable, paint a vivid picture of a man whose life was as dramatic as his death.
Yet we must tread carefully between fact and fiction. While speculation is abundant, evidence is scarce. The circumstances of his death are clouded by the biases and agendas of those who recorded them. It's paramount we apply a critical lens, recognizing that the past is often narrated by victors and survivors with their own versions of truth.
I'd argue that focusing too intently on the manner of his death misses the broader historical significance. Alexander's campaign stretched the known world, and his death precipitated a turbulent period of wars among his successors. The so-called Diadochi fought over the scraps of his empire, reshaping the political landscape of the Hellenistic world. The cause of his death is less consequential than the aftermath.
However, we cannot overlook the poetic justice, if indeed he was poisoned. A conqueror who swept through cities, leaving devastation in his wake, meeting his end not on the battlefield, but in the quiet of his room. It's a stark reminder that despite our ambitions, we are all mortal. Rome, too, learned this lesson in time.
It seems then that Alexander's death is as multifaceted as his life. Whether viewed through a lens of skepticism, as a cautionary tale, or as the spark that ignited a succession crisis, it reminds us of the complexities inherent in studying such a colossal figure. His legacy, built on conquest and ambition, was as vulnerable to the machinations of men as it was to the impartial hand of fate. Let us wade into the tumultuous aftermath of Alexander's demise. The division of his empire amongst the generals, a tale steeped in ambition, betrayal, and incessant wars. What insights can you glean from this fragmentation?
A clear demonstration of Alexander's failure to establish a sustainable administrative framework. His empire fragmented because it was held together solely by his personal charisma and military prowess. The succession wars were inevitable, given the absence of a clear heir and the disparate ambitions of his diadochi. Each sought to carve out a realm of their own rather than preserve unity.
Indeed, the wars following Alexander's death bear testament to the inherent instability of empires built by conquest alone. The generals, each a lion in his own right, could never agree to share the hunt. The immediate aftermath was as predictable as it was tragic. Power vacuums invite conflict, and Alexander's empire was no different.
Yet, how grand was the vision that could conceive such an empire? Alexander's ambition was to meld the world into a single entity, a unified polity under one ruler. The Diadochi, in their greed and short-sightedness, shattered this vision. Their actions led not to unity, but to centuries of strife, undoing much of what Alexander sought to achieve.
The partition and the consequent wars underscore a fundamental truth about human nature. Power corrupts, and absolute power attracts the absolutely corrupt. The generals were little more than vultures circling Alexander's legacy, each waiting for their chance to strike. Their wars of succession were less about preserving Alexander's legacy and more about satisfying their own boundless ambition.
Indeed, the details of these successor wars are as sordid as they are illustrative. Ptolemy abducting Alexander's corpse is a case in point, a dramatic gesture that symbolizes the utter disrespect for the unity Alexander envisioned. Each general sought to legitimize his claim through association with Alexander, yet their actions only served to fragment his empire further.
And yet, from this chaos emerged the Hellenistic world, a testament to Alexander's lasting influence. Despite the division, the spread of Hellenic culture across these realms was remarkable. It was not the empire Alexander might have envisioned, but it was an empire of the mind, nonetheless.
An empire of the mind, perhaps, but built upon the ruins of what might have been. The Hellenistic era was marked by endless wars, shifting alliances, and the suffering of countless people. We must question whether the cultural exchanges justified the immense human cost.
Yet, without Alexander's conquests, the world would have been poorer, less interconnected. His vision, although unrealized in his desired form, sparked a confluence of ideas, innovations, and cultures. The successors, for all their faults, carried the torch of this Hellenized world.
A torch that often set the world ablaze. Remember, the legacy of Alexander's empire is not merely the spread of Hellenic culture, but also the enduring lesson of the dangers of unbridled ambition. The successors' wars remind us that the quest for power often leads to ruin, not just for the conquerors, but for the conquered as well.
A stark examination of the aftermath of greatness. Alexander's empire, in its fragmentation, serves as both a lesson and a lamentation, a legacy of grand ambitions confronted by the immutable forces of human nature. What remains is the enduring brilliance of Hellenic culture and the shadow of what could have been a unified empire under the most famous of conquerors. Let us converge once more upon the legacy of Alexander the Great, an endeavor as audacious as the man himself. His conquests, though grand, left the world in a labyrinth of power struggles and cultural fusions.
Indeed, the Alexander we scrutinize is not solely made of the flesh and bone of history, but of the aspirations and failures of human governance. The partition of his empire illustrates the ephemeral nature of power and the inevitable decay of singular dominance.
Precisely. The realpolitik of Alexander's aftermath reveals the stark reality that empires, no matter how grandiose, are but human constructs, vulnerable to human frailties. His generals, far from being the architects of a new order, became mere pawns in the ceaseless struggle for supremacy.
Yet, one cannot overlook the pathos of Alexander's quest, a unification of diverse peoples under the aegis of Hellenism. This dream, albeit marred by conquest, brought forth a cultural renaissance. It's a testament to the power of vision, however flawed by the hubris of imperial ambition.
Vision or not, Alexander's methods and their execution speak volumes of the dichotomy within the man. His reach towards deification, the expedient melding of cultures, and his relentless pursuit of glory brought about as much ruin as it did enlightenment. The seeds of discord sown during his reign bore bitter fruit in the successors' wars.
And let's not skirt around the salacious allure of his death. The enigmatic end of Alexander has fueled speculation and intrigue for ages. But in focusing on the melodrama, we risk overlooking the crux of the matter. His death heralded the collapse of an empire, fragmenting the world he sought to unify.
It is a testament to the inherent contradiction of empire, the relentless pursuit of power and control, juxtaposed with the sheer fragility of human ambition. His legacy, while monumental, is a mosaic of success and failure, a warning to those who would follow in his footsteps.
Indeed, Alexander's life was a conflux of triumph and tragedy. His exploits forever changed the course of history, for better or worse. In his ambition, we see the reflection of humanity's own desire for greatness, and in his fall, the cautionary tale of hubris.
Let us not forget, history is not merely a collection of dates and events, but a mirror reflecting our own virtues and vices. As we behold Alexander through the annals of time, we confront not just his legacy, but the enduring questions of power, governance, and human nature.
In the end, perhaps it is the quest for understanding that is Alexander's greatest legacy to us. An unending journey, not unlike his own, seeking not just to conquer physical territories, but the realms of knowledge and insight.
So, as we conclude, let us remember Alexander not only for what he achieved, but also for the lessons his life and actions impart to us. The annals of history are fraught with such figures, yet he stands among them a colossus, both in his deeds and the shadows they cast.
Thus, we close our examination of Alexander the Great, a figure as complex and contradictory as the legacy he leaves behind. In our discourse, we have traversed the expanse of his influence, reflecting upon the multifaceted nature of his impact upon the world. May this discussion serve as a beacon for future inquiries into the enigma of Alexander and the indelible mark he left upon history.